Welcome, everyone, to the Penny Stamps Distinguished Speaker Series. My name is Christina Hamilton, the series director, and today we bring you someone who pushes conceptual boundaries with material and fabric, a textile artist and fashion designer, Gary Graham. A big thank you to our partners for their support of today's program. We have Design Core Detroit, which just wrapped up its Detroit Month of Design, which hopefully you took something in. The U of M Arts Initiative, Detroit PBS, PBS Books, WNET's All Arts, and Michigan Public 91.7 FM. Just one announcement for you all today. Next week on Thursday, we will be presenting the multidisciplinary Indigenous artist Emily Monet here, and she's already in town, as a matter of fact. Starting this evening and continuing daily up and through next Wednesday, she is presenting a production of Nigamon Tunai, which is an immersive performance ritual which is rooted in the natural world on the Power Center stage. So if you do not already have a ticket, you should get one. Students, remember, you get discounted tickets that you can get your tickets at ums.org. So see the show before we get to hear from Emily next week. Please do remember to silence your cell phones. We are not going to have our regular Q&A in here today due to time constraints. However, instead, Gary will be happy to meet with folks for a meet and greet in the lobby directly following the stage presentation here. So it might take him a moment to get out there, but if everybody wants to gather in the lobby that wants to say hello, we will do that. So who is Gary Graham? First, I just want to mention Liz Collins. For some of you in the audience, you may remember another extraordinary textile artist who spoke in the series actually 1 year ago today. Liz is the one that we have to thank for introducing Gary to the series and me to Gary and for bringing us all together today. So keep your eye on Liz Collins. She's a hot one. Gary Graham is an American fashion designer and artist. He founded his eponymous women's wear line in 1999, gaining notice for its exquisite detailing and fine craftsmanship. And for 20 years, his designs were sold in Tribeca at his flagship store and through luxury retailers worldwide. He now produces small batch collections under the moniker Gary Graham 422, drawing inspiration from historical figures and antique textiles to create visionary 21st century fashion. Alongside his design work, he maintains a robust artistic practice. He's collaborated with artists such as Kara Walker and Meredith Monk. He also works with institutions such as the Hancock Shaker Village and Rhode Island School of Design Museum, Peabody Essex Museum, and the American Folk Art Museum, where he creates installations, clothing collections, drawings, and sculpture that are inspired by these sites' histories, architecture, and curated objects. Many of you in the audience may recall Gary Graham made a foray into reality TV not so long ago. He was a finalist on season 2 of the design competition series Making the Cut. Gary Graham went and earned his BFA at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, just over the road. He's also a member of the Council of Fashion Designers of America. After finishing school at the SAIC in Chicago, he took off for New York City. And he began working in costuming for the inimitable Julie Taymor of Lion King fame, and also for J. Morgan Puett, who became a mentor and introduced Gary to garment dyeing, which led to his very first collection. Gary, I just have to say, is really the epitome of our current series theme this year, Echo and Flux. Bringing history forward, please welcome to the stage, Gary Graham.
Thanks. Thanks for having me, Ann Arbor. Thank you, Christina. In 1999, I started my first collection, and it was inspired by this time-traveling character who traveled time collecting dust, so she was known as the dust collector. I think it's this great omen for me that an hour from now, the film Army of Darkness is playing in this very building by one of my heroes, Sam Raimi. And when I started this collection and during this time, Sam was also producing TV shows like Xena, Warrior Princess, and Hercules. And I just loved the way he was recontextualizing mythology. And so all of my early collections were really about this traveling person, this hero's journey. My materials were graze goods. At the time I had limited resources, so I was taking graze goods fabrics and garment dyeing them and transforming them. And really the idea was that these garments kind of came from the past. And I was simultaneously building, my retail and wholesale clients. So about 10 years, I was building these textile techniques and garment dyeing and these different characters. And it was this moment, too, where I made a decision not to go into costume, to go into fashion. And a lot of that had to do with working for different fashion designers, but also kind of loving the idea of creating work that goes out into the world. So in terms of performance art, and also, most importantly, I wanted to write my own stories. I didn't really want to costume other narratives, as the narratives were really important. This collection in particular is when I really started writing my own stories. This was inspired by the 1920s portrait photographer Mike this Farmer. And he was this amazing character. Not a lot is known about him, but what I wanted to do is take his style, the way he posed people, and write a story. And so I was working next to the Odeon, which is this restaurant on West Broadway in New York City. And this is also the first time where I kind of had this parafictional relationship with a real person. So I saw this waitress, Cynthia, and I said, Cynthia, I have this idea, and she's like, what is this? The idea was these two sisters. And the idea was simple, because this farmer would photograph people in town over the years. And so Cynthia was like, well, I have a sister, she's studying law in Boston, and she came down. And so this is kind of, this interaction, this conversation with the actual person. And then also my process in terms of being inspired and doing research. My favorite thing is to go somewhere and just do a cold study. So this was an abandoned water slide in Honesdale, Pennsylvania. And it was just in this stark, frozen field. And, it just shouted like this story. And so for me, with garment dyeing and doing my custom colors, it's like, how do I approach this as form and color? And how do we turn a structure into fabric and then into a garment? And this is also where I really started developing the cocoon shape. And then my textile, the distressing and the traveler. And the other thing about the traveler is I love the ideas. You never know where someone just came from. So when they cross that threshold, when they walk into the door, it's like you just never know what happened, 5 seconds before. And with this, my textiles and my resources as they grew, because I was simultaneously growing my business, I started designing engineered jacquards and working with historic textiles. And this really allowed me to really literally weave the past into the fabric. And from this, I was invited to work with the American Folk Art Museum in New York. And another thing I love to do is just go into archives and see how it speaks and see what happens. I had gone in really thinking I would do something about Henry Darger, because they have a huge Darger collection. But I saw this coverlet, and this was also when I was like, what are these symbols? What are these motifs? Who made this? This is the Ancar coverlet. It was woven in Long Island, New York. And so I applied the engineered jacquard technique and played with the scale. So this was a play on scale and character. Then I was invited by the Peabody Essex Museum in Salem, Massachusetts, to again kind of open their archives to me. And I immediately was drawn to these two chairs. To the left is a chair, it's called Chair of Power from Zanzibar, and to the right is a chair from what was then called Vijayapatam, India. So it's an ebony and ivory inlaid design. And so it's also when I started questioning what being the attraction, the grasp, what does it mean to grab something, to desire it, to be interested in it, and then what is kind of your responsibility to it. This is me there studying, and what I did is I started just hand drawing the symbols that were in the chair, kind of trying to figure out what the meaning was, and that kind of exploration, and then also taking it to a garment. And with the two chairs, I was thinking of Chair of Power. The other chair was made for the Western market, and just thinking about our seats of power. And I imagined two women in power, in conversation. And I shot this lookbook in my friend Evie Day's studio next to her fire escape strand of DNA on the model Jamie Boucher. And so these were just showing, this was really a study for an installation. I did an installation at the Peabody Essex Museum where I asked Meredith Monk to contribute the vocals. I love this piece she did. It's called Bird Code from 1979, where she recorded her voice inside of a silo. And so I had the idea of, instead of heads, they would have speaker heads. And so you would get to hear, we went into the studio together and we separated her voice into two channels. And so you would hear this kind of conversation. And so this is just a rough idea of how I could see two actresses possibly playing these and even lip syncing. And it's just a short sound. So then, thank you. Thank you, Meredith. So again, all of these conceits and these projects were also, I was running a business and selling clothes. And this image in particular was Jamie wearing a dress. So you can see it's the jacquard that's not the garment, that's using actually the three-dimensional pattern as the two-dimensional pattern, and on to infinity. And continuing the idea of replacing the patriarchy, there was a show at the Met called Interwoven Globe, and it was just this landmark show that really showed the trade of textiles and the history of textiles and all the interconnectedness of it. This was an Indian embroidery that was produced for the Portuguese market. And in the center is the goddess of Discordia. So I started to kind of put my parafictional desires into play and asked, friends and good customers of mine who I knew, some I knew better, some I knew less, but I asked them to participate in a project called Palessator. Palessator is an anagram for Cleopatra. And the idea is that the 7 archetypes, like this was Alexander Marzella as the poet, and then Carol Walker was the general, and then this is Sunrise Ruffalo as a seeker. And this is also like with her, she was relating to a chair, to another object. So a lot of the props and the objects become characters as well. And again, just kind of the pattern, the sleeve pattern becomes part of the chair. This was also, this is Parker Posey as the magician. This was also when streaming was really taking off and everyone had ideas for TV shows, and with Game of Thrones and House of Cards. But the idea was that these women worked and operated in a subterranean, a canal underneath the Pentagon. So whatever was happening on top, we knew they were going to work it out. So they were kind of like the new A-team in a way. This is musician Naomi Yang as the archivist. And so I wanted to create kind of a faux trailer. And again, this is, selling. It was after, so many years, I finally got into Barney's. And so, I just wanted to kind of show you the context of also the gowns. This is a gown worn by Parker and a gown worn by the poet in the Barney's catalog. So, at the same time, we're also operating a manufacturing company, and we're producing things all over the world at this point in terms of all of our resources. And I'm continuing to make collections. So during this time, I made over 38 collections, biannual collections. And then I was approached by an interior textile company called Pollock in New York City to create a textile collection. And so for me, I was like, okay, there's like the TV show now. Now this is really our location scouting project. And really what this was is, for me, a research trip. And so I call it, when you go somewhere and you just respond to the space and you start extracting inspiration. And the extracting, the grasp, the taking, the being attracted to, the taking, how does that exchange translate? And what is our responsibility to it? So these were all historical locations. This is the Block Island Lighthouse. I worked with the Rhode Island Historical Society in terms of securing the locations and just how architecture and texture can really start also being part of the design process. And so all of my research boards were, was always about kind of quote unquote original or grafted content. This is the actual textile collection in development. I also met my partner, Sean Scher, and he had this shop up in upstate New York, so I started going up there, and this is when I decided to do. I also was starting to get interested in installation work, so this is the beginnings, and also another character. This is a character I started thinking after all of these kind of, after all of this, I was thinking about this installation and also about queer characters in history and parafictional characters and the queer migration story. And that's how this started. This was a Jacob from Warwick. And also I was doing also simultaneously, everything kind of had to fit into my ready to wear. So this print was taken from a wallpaper in a mansion in Warwick. So that was also, it also then became a tapestry within the textile collection. And this is the installation in progress, and also the idea of camouflage, and how we hide and how we take on motifs and how our memory plays into this. And so this was just another visual study for a character study. Again, kind of thinking, about, this is when I started really thinking about shopping and shopping within TVs and narratives and building characters. This is my friend Rebecca Purcell, who was doing, during the opening, she was doing live object readings from a security camera upstairs. And I always have this kind of Cassandra figure, usually in all of my work. And now this was my final collection before closing Gary Graham in Tribeca. This is just to show like my collage process. After I develop the fabrics, my favorite thing is to play with them and collage them before they get turned into a garment. Just to note also, knitwear was a big part of my company. I love designing knitwear because there's just, again, a lot of story you can put within the textile. And then, I closed the store. I closed my business after 20 years. And if you've never closed a business, it's kind of an incredible experience. But at the same time, I was dating Sean and not knowing what to do. I just got this great apartment in the village, and I needed a break. And Sean asked me, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know what to do, but I don't want to pay rent anymore, and I just want to be in a place that I own, and I want to make stuff. I just want to work with my hands. That's what I want to do. That's what I always wanted to do. When I was little, I just made stuff. And the older you get, it kind of just, everything gets really complicated as you build your dream, right? So we looked around and we found this building that we could afford for 22 Main Street in a town called Franklin, New York. This is the building in 1909. And Sean found this on eBay, and I had it kind of blown up. So originally it was a bank and a post office. It was always a commercial building. But of course, this photo of these three women who I completely just stole ownership of in terms of the narrative, Lillian, Marion, and Esther, and started creating this parafictional story of them in terms of they just went into the bank, they asked for a business loan, and of course, being who they were denied. And all the drama that then ensues after that. And their idea was they were going to start the first wheat-free grist mill. And they were going to have, daycare. I mean, it's like a revision of 9 to 5. I mean, which was a huge, huge influence on me. The trio of those women. I get emotional because it really saved my life. Watching them on screen, Dolly, Lily, and Jane, Just completely rewired my brain. So I'm in this town, and I'm just making stuff up. I can shoot. There's sunlight. There's room. Nobody cares if you take photos of their house. Nobody, there's no permits. There's no, there's a lot that's not there that there's a lot there that is, kind of allows you to breathe. I also, at the same time, was making clothes. So I had this idea of the labor card. And what I wanted to do is just show who worked on your garment, how long it took, and then leave it to the customer to kind of do the math. I go in and out of this conversation with myself, but basically I just thought, I'm just going to show the hours. You can decide what I get paid an hour, or you can decide, all of that. But it's kind of a conversation. Actually, the gentleman's name, Derek, who's on the card, just by pure coincidence, his grandmother owned the building that we're in during the 80s. It was a department store. And again, being attracted to objects and characters, and the characters and the objects kind of melding. So this is a transferware plate of Sean's that I turned into a print. And again, like my last group therapy, I said, they're like, what are you going to do? And I was like, I'm going upstate. I'm going to start a narrative-driven home shopping network on YouTube. And you're going to be able to watch these videos and buy stuff from them. And it's just going to be great. It's going to be like Outlander, Finding Your Roots, Antiques Roadshow. It's going to be all this stuff. It's like the other name of this talk is How Grandiosity Can Destroy You. So I made these videos, and there are a lot of, I learned that I'm not a filmmaker, but I did it, and some of them are better than others. But really, the idea to the left is, Black Friday is kind of a nightmare. So I wanted to do this film, a battle between the muse of capitalism and the Fisher King, and so that was that idea. And then just you can then buy it. So that was the plan. Again, objects. This is a ginger jar with decoupage, and just thinking about it, just the desire, just being attracted to certain things and why we're attracted to things, and kind of dissecting that and extracting meaning from it. There's this incredible mill upstate called Thistle Hill Weavers, owned by a woman named Robert Goody. And so I was working with her. This is a jacquard that was woven for the parlor at the Lincoln home. And what was great is she would allow me to go up there and just throw wefts, just pick yarns and play with the weft colors. So again, I'm just making collections, kind of back to what I was doing in terms of making clothes. But this time my resources were limited. Sometimes I would just cut into antique fabric. I started continuing my knitwear. This is a grafted chiffon. So I learned knit grafting from my friend Liz Collins. Liz worked on some of my early collections. And so I've just been, I love that technique of felting and grafting that she invented, really. Also, it's just so great because there's all these historical homes up there that you can make up stories and get inspired. When I first moved upstate, I always heard about the Merrickville Tunnel, and so this is an abandoned train tunnel. And, I just am really interested in the history of the railroad in this country. Is so fascinating, but this is a completely abandoned train tunnel. So these become stories, and the pattern of a jacket becomes a pattern in itself. This is a Bargello jacket. And I was approached by this amazing store called Joyce Hong Kong. They're an incredible boutique department store in Hong Kong, all over China. And they asked me to do a special collection. Had this amazing assistant, Vera Powley, who I was like, can you embroider? And she just started doing these incredible embroideries over these tourist tapestries. And then, with all of this, I decided to go on this adventure of going on TV and being part of a competition. I'm not a competition show person. They give me so much anxiety, but I was like, okay, this is kind of like what I'm trying to do. It's like this, like, you're buying clothes and seeing the story, and it was COVID. So, I hadn't been on a plane in a long time, and I kind of was sussing it out, and I was like, I'm just gonna do this. I'm just gonna do it. And so immediately, the first challenge was we had 3 days to build 2 pieces, one for runway, one wearable, whatever, however they defined it. And so I was like, okay, this is how I'm going to tell my story. And a lot of people, they're going to be able to, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. And this is really the ticket. And so I went to Rabbit. I was like, Rabbit, I want a large motif. I want an ingrained carpet. This is all she had, so these were the remnants. So I was like, okay, how can I build something out of this? Then I went to my favorite army surplus, and I was like, yeah, I need this. What's going on? Can I get, also when you're doing these things, you have to get releases from everybody, So they're like, well, what is it you're doing? To get the release for that tombstone was like, it took forever, because as soon as they see like Amazon, they're like, no. So it's just all this, and just the drama of producing something. I really just enjoyed the whole experience. So this is before I get on the plane, I'm doing all this. And what happened was, as I'm building these pieces, I'm like, I got to do like the basic piece. And I was like, okay, I'll take this motif, I'll make a print out of it, I'll screen print it. The only screen printer I could find up there was this amazing guy, Tyler, who runs this company in Oneonta, a university town, and called Oneonta. And he did this for me, and I was like, I just kind of grabbed it, and then I was like, why did I choose this? Like, what is this? Who's going to want to buy this? It's not a flower, it's kind of female looking, and what is it? So then I tried to over-dye it to kind of disguise it, and then it was just so late, I had to kind of go with it. And then I went on TV, and I did the whole thing. It was an amazing experience. And then post-production, a year later, it comes out. And I was like, no one's going to buy this thing. And the amazing thing about this experience was, my whole career, I was told, you're not scalable. And when you're talking to people about your business and you're selling ideas, in your head, everyone's going to want it. You're like, why wouldn't they want this? Why wouldn't they want this story? And so being told that, talking about House of the Seven Gables to some business consultant and him you're not scalable. This is way too esoteric. And what was so amazing, for the first time, I had this opportunity to see these ideas converge, and to come to life and for people to respond to them. And so basically this was this moment where I got to connect to people, and it was blown away, and all these people were, this dress sold in the thousands. And it was produced in India, and it was a silkscreen print, and they did an amazing job, and it sold, and people loved it. And for this moment, I was like, okay, I'm definitely gonna have my own TV show now. And so I was like, I gotta do a deck. The production company was bought by Reese Witherspoon's company. I was like, okay, I did a great job on the show. I worked really hard. It was really easy to work with. I'm gonna have this pitch meeting, and just kind of waiting around for the email. And I waited, and I'm just like, this is going to be so great. Where I'm going to live, I'm going to live in LA, and I can also live in Franklin, but then I'm probably going to have somewhere in Asia. And anyway, this kind of faded, and I kind of took a break from the whole TV thing, and even just making videos. And things just kind of settled. But what was also great about having a lot of people see your work is a lot of people really connected, and that was just something that I was never able to do on my own. It takes an army. But I was approached by the trustees of Massachusetts to, Gary, we would love for you to choose one of our homes. So the trustees of Massachusetts is much like the National Trust in England, and they are a land trust in Massachusetts, and on some of the land they have these historic homes that they're the stewards for. And I chose as a challenge the Old Manse because, it's not a Gilded Age home. It's very simple in a way, but the history is so loaded. It's where Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote Nature. It's where Nathaniel Hawthorne and Sophia Peabody first married. And again, I kind of focused on the women who lived there, like Emerson's Mary Moody Emerson, who was Emerson's aunt. That was a huge influence on his writing and his way of thinking. And so I was thinking also about installation and about the different motifs. This is the bullseye transom in the door. And taking these objects and creating them, making them into object lessons, and the women of the home creating these object lessons with the actual home. This is also in Concord. It's also in the land where the Revolutionary War started. It's where the shot heard around the world was out the window. It was on this property. And so I was thinking about playing with these ideas in terms of analog, in terms of a silk screen, and also digital. And I was also thinking from a child's perspective how they would interpret these. And the idea of these phantoms, these house phantoms, kind of started to evolve. And then also always then taking it and then making it into real, quote unquote, real life. This was taken from the attic wallpaper. And this challenge of really taking anything and making it into, giving it new meaning and really studying it. This was a bracket that, I just kind of made into this motif. And this the bracket sweater, so the idea of a bracket. And in the card, the bracket was, what do you put on your shelf? What do you deem worthy of putting on a shelf? And who's holding up that shelf? So these were these lessons. Then, I was approached by Kara Walker to collaborate with her on the costumes for her next installation. This is a photograph of the San Francisco earthquake in 1906. So I started this journey of working with her on the costumes. So to the right is her drawing of one of her characters, Water Bearer. And it was such an honor to see how she developed these characters and see them in process and kind of respond to their coming literally to life. These are my sketches next to her kind of sketches and her doodles of us communicating and just the back and forth and kind of trying to understand what she wanted and what was right for it. So this was a character levitator, and she would go up 30 feet into the air and come down. And so this is kind of me trying to work it out and thinking about the print artwork and then the complex, these weren't human-sized figures, these were larger than life. So the pattern making and then all the technical, challenges that went along with it. This is in Hypersonic, who built all of these figures and turned Kara's drawings and sculptures into these moving automatons. And so, again, just trying to work it out. And so for this character, I was thinking about, well, what is she wearing and what could we do with the textile on this particular character? And these were quilt. These were textiles that Kara had in her, in her large inspiration research files. She had this amazing cabinet of just files, and so I was looking at the textile one, and so I said, Kara, we could kind of do anything. And she's like, well, I have some x-rays, I have some MRIs. I was like, oh, that would be amazing. Let's, so I started playing around with her x-rays and her scans and thinking about them in terms of a quilt. And so this is where Levitator's gown was like over 4 yards long, and there's like 3 panels. To the left is Belle Toller's pants and corset, again, taking the digital print and really bringing out, there's a lot of things that go into it. Again, I worked with this woman, Gina Gregorio, who teaches at Pratt, and we really worked on getting the tones right. And it was just, an amazing experience. At one point, I almost had to move in to Hypersonic and then the Navy Yard to really work with the robots and the technicians. This is the finished installation. This is Water Bearer and Levitator, and then Belle Toller. Harpy was this gown with images of cotton fields, and she had this gaping hole in the side of her. All of these also made noise. This is Levitator's corset using an X-ray of Kara's spine. This is the main character, Fortuna, who had fortunes coming out of her mouth. The installation it's up for another year. It closes next July, so if anyone's in San Francisco, you should see it. So thinking about the grasp, this is like the grasp and trying to weasel my way back into Hollywood. I had this relationship with Alex Bouvard, who's the costume designer for White Lotus, and she was talking about the Wallace collection, and I knew she was working on season 3, so I was like, well, maybe I should just think of something. So I looked at the Wallace collection, and I came across this Egyptian lantern, and I just kind of worked with Gina on lifting something from that. And, I like to have a lot of transparency where things come from. I think it's just part of the research and part of the story. It's still a grasp. I'm still taking it. But it was really to build this character. And so the character was the owner of the White Lotus. And I just thought, oh, okay, this Egyptian lamp. I know that Buddhism is a big part of the story. And so that's this kind of combination. So it's taking two things and mixing them together, for better or worse. And so now, where I'm at is I have this studio practice. I like to do things where I'm not making a garment, where I can set up things where I explore. This is just an exploration of different formations of rope and rope combinations. This is also like a Morse code. This is every one of these has a different kind of body movement in terms of martial arts. And then also in terms of exploring, again, this idea, this installation of a queer migration, a queer character. This is a character that came out of the Old Manse research. He's wearing a bullseye helmet, so he's taken the glass from the door, and he's wearing that to see the world. And I also saw this as kind of the origins of psychedelia. This is post-William Blake. It's before Timothy Leary, this time of what is the other, in terms of how we see things. And the idea of the transom was another person's distortion could be another's clarity. So I'm developing this. This is a show I did where it's called Escape Suit. Escape is always kind of a theme for me. So you get somewhere you want to be, but then you kind of just want to escape. So this is literally, I took a suit and this transferware object that was, his name's Aristus. And Aristus, this is his traveling companion. And so I drew the transferware onto the panels, and then this is the shedding the skin of the escape suit. These are the negative, these are the cutouts of the suit. And then also, like, one thing that's happening now with me is where it's like 2D, 2D from 3D, and then reanimated. And I recently taught a class at RISD. This is one of the locations I brought the class in developing this research methodology worksheet in terms of how we approach a space and how we approach the other and how we relate, like the grasp. I love that shirt. Oh my God, give it to me. Or I love that. I'm going to take that. It's like it's all part of it. So like this parking garage for me, it's the first time I taught. So it became this kind of sanctuary because I could find a parking space there. I'm really neurotic about parking, so I would always go there. And then this kind of brutalist architecture, but kind of asking these questions. What do I see? What am I projecting? And kind of this non-judgmental relationship between the two. And so to the left is a paper study for Jacquard design. And then this is the current project I'm working on. And also years and years of taking from historic textiles and motifs and always wondering, who made them, where did they come from, and just thinking, working in a more abstract way. I mean, I'm still relating to the world, I'm still taking something. And so, I was thinking, about the theater, and I grew up in Newark, Delaware, which is also, it's also a university town, and this is the State Theater where I grew up, and the State Theater was just a really amazing place to go to see films that weren't on TV, or films I wasn't able to see, and I have this memory of, they did this thing every year called the 24-hour movie marathon, and you could literally stay in the theater for 24 hours. So this one experience, I got to see, Road Warrior, Evil Dead, Sam Raimi again, all these films that kind of rewired and allowed freedom, because you're seeing this other world, the original Blade Runner. The costumes in Road Warrior really just had a huge influence on me. So, where did you go? In 1984, the British post-punk band The Cure played here on November 10th. The same night, 3 teenagers went missing. They were attending the concert. A stage right pipe organ. Ben Levy, the organist, died. What are you trying to show me? Yeah, I don't believe you. Oh, I see you. Your pagan ways won't fool me this time. That's where you live. That's who you are. what did you do? What did you do with them?
Can you believe they just throw this away? How long have we been living on this?
Our sustenance? Well, I've learned if I take 2 of the popcorn kernels and sandwich them with a juji.
From the concession stand? We promised we won't take any.
I have discovered that the combination of the 4 grams of sugar in 1 juji along with the high sodium content of the kernels, when taken on the hour, every hour, can create a continuous flow of energy and focus. I've been away for 3 days. See, the idea is to keep the maximum level of sodium and sugar in my bloodstream at all times. And the red ones, they seem more powerful for some reason.
What are you eating?
Yesterday, I got so old, I felt like I could die. Yesterday, I got so old, I felt like I could cry. Why don't we live backwards? Like, instead of living towards something, why can't we move away from it?
That's impossible. You can't move towards something in reverse.
Yes, you can. See, we already know what's wrong with us.
What do you mean by wrong?
Our challenges. You know, the things that could potentially get in our way of our dreams, of our hopes.
Oh, you mean like how we ended up here, how you sold us on this idea, how you're hiding, how we're hiding.
I'm not hiding. I want to be here. See, we all know how much space he can take up. He can be... But that's also how we ended up here, right? So, if you just accept this about yourself, you can accept it and then use it as an obstacle to work towards things, so you're not totally surprised when things don't go your way. It's like you factor it in, like any other obstacle or challenge or restraint. It's like, okay, this is the part where I'm totally going to freak out, so you can just use it as strategy.
Yes, like take the 3, no, 2, no, 1.5% of you and get rid of it. Like, redo it.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
I got it. It's like this. How you never asked for any help, and you think you know everything. Let's start backwards. Oh, I'm all alone in my geodome in the redwood forest. I wish I had been more vulnerable and accepted the love of another human.
I am open to love.
Not really, but now you know.
You need someone to tell you objective things about yourself, to counter the subjective fantasies that you create to build your desire. It's like having a shrink hardwired to your subconscious, a filter.
Just turn it off.
Well, the objective observation is, I'm awesome. And my subjective view is, I'm a little more awesome. They aren't that far apart.
Light years apart, actually.
What was that?
That's where he died.
Yesterday, I got so cold, it shivered down my spine. Yesterday, I got so cold, I couldn't leave it behind.
How do we get out of here?
Are you ready now?
Go on, just walk away. Go on, go take the stage. Go on, just disappear. Go on, away from here.
Are you coming?
And I know I was wrong when I said it was true, that it couldn't be me, be her in between without you. Without you!